I recently got back from the Tropical Weather Conference down in South Padre, Texas, South Padre Island. Always a good time. I try to get a little fishing in on the Laguna Madre whenever I can as well. They've got some good red fishing down there and a lot of the trout. Pretty good eating too. We talked a lot about hurricanes, of course, Tropical Weather Conference. I was able to catch up with Dr. Phil Klotzbach, and he's from the University, Colorado State University, and he does his earliest Atlantic season outlook in April. He'll do another one in the middle of summer, and then the last one coming up in the fall. And what we're seeing is an increased threat for an above normal season. It may not take off right away, but we are expecting above normal, especially as we get into September and October.
Yeah, so we are forecasting an above normal hurricane season in 2025, a total of 17 named storms. Of those 17, 9 becoming hurricanes. Of those 9, 4 becoming major Category 3, 4, 5 hurricanes. Compared with last year, we are forecasting an above normal season, but not as much activity as we forecast and what we observed last year, where we ended up with 11 hurricanes and 5 major hurricanes. A couple of big factors going into that. One is we don't anticipate El Nino this summer and fall. El Nino is warmer than normal water in the central and eastern tropical Pacific. When that occurs, it tends to shift where thunderstorms form in the Pacific in such a way that it increases winds high up in the atmosphere in the Atlantic that tear apart hurricanes. So El Nino is good for us, bad for the hurricane. We don't anticipate an El Nino this summer and fall. The Atlantic, thankfully, is not as warm as last year at this time, but it's still running a little bit above normal. So generally, if we don't have El Nino and the Atlantic's a bit warmer than normal, we end up with a somewhat above normal season, which is what our current forecast is.
Last year we had such a big break. We're anticipating September. You ring the bell in August, and you're like, we're ramping up. Everybody's prepared, and then nothing happened, and all of a sudden it exploded in late September, early October.
Yeah, it was a really unusual season. So it was defined as a hyperactive season last year, but it was an extremely unusual way that it got there. We had the earliest Category 5 on record in Hurricane Beryl. Started off really, really busy. We had Debbie and Ernesto, 2 other hurricanes. So we had 3 hurricanes by the middle of August, which is a lot. And then the season, when normally the season ramps up, it got extremely quiet. We had a kind of very pronounced 5-week lull. And then basically when the lull ended, it just blew up. And we obviously had a very busy end of the season and unfortunately 2 extremely impactful hurricanes in Helene and Milton.
One thing about Hurricane Milton, this was after Helene, who just devastated the Carolinas, a fast-moving hurricane, and it led to a lot of flooding in that area as well. That got a lot of news, but Milton set the record for the number of tornadoes. They had 46 tornadoes down with Hurricane Milton in Florida, and it began just before midnight, October 8th, and went through October 9th. So they even had an EF3 tornado with that. So Milton on the satellite, a lot of lightning and those big thunderstorms, far-reaching impact down into South Florida, a long way from where the storm actually made landfall. And then again, this one just missed Tampa as well, a direct hit there. So very, very good for them. But I also talked to Dr. Phil about the early season hurricane development. Usually we get a lot of storms that don't quite make it to hurricane status, but they can cause a lot of problems down there on the Gulf. And what happens is they usually develop along the tail end of a frontal boundary. And he says those are a lot harder to predict. I wish we could predict those a little bit better this far out, but because a lot of you getting ready to go on vacation down there along the Gulf after school is out.
Yeah, you can get early season storm activity, especially in the western part of the basin, so the western, or basically in the Gulf or right off the east coast of the United States. We don't have a lot of predictability at being able to forecast exactly if one of those storms is going to form, say, months in advance. Certainly once it gets closer, you can start to be able to forecast those, but they often will form off of like the ends of cold fronts or something when they kind of get like your late season frontal activity before summer really kicks off. And then typically once you get into August is when you start to see more kind of healthier, stronger storms develop.
So just to summarize, we are expecting an above normal season in the Atlantic Basin, but a majority of this may not happen until we get past the month of August. Still plenty of time for that. But again, we're always going to have those early season storms down in the Gulf. If you are planning your vacation after school gets out, that's pretty much going to be it for the hurricane season so far. I'll update you later on as we get closer to the actual hurricane season itself.